Hello and welcome to Spring to Sociology. So today we are going to do the second part of religion in our chapter on Emile Durkheim. We have heard a lot of stories about how and why religion came into being. Some say it was because of dreams of heaven or fear of death, or maybe it was a psychological need which people have. Durkheim sees something else in religion. He argues that religion originates from an experience, but not that of dreams or death, but it was the experience of society that gave birth to religion. Humans created religion the moment they created society. To understand what Durkheim is saying, we have to look at the data Durkheim is using, that is, his definition of religion and how it is produced. This is important as what Durkheim wants for us to look at is the most general social features common in all religions, not in terms of beliefs or gods, but in terms of social practices and effects. And to do this, he wants to look at religion in the most pure form when it started, before it was obfuscated by rituals and rules. Think of people sitting in a group. If you have played this game, you will know that the story changes as it goes from one person to another. Same is true with religion. The further we go from the origin, the greater the confusion, how it began in the first place. Also, since ancient religion was simpler, Durkheim approach allows us to break the social phenomena down to its parts and to identify the circumstances under which it was born. For Durkheim, the most ancient form of religion was Totemism, and he uses data on totemic religions from Australian Aborigines and Native American tribes for his research. Before beginning his research, Durkheim had to create a definition of religion. A definition allows us to clearly see what to include and what to exclude from our data collection. So, according to Durkheim, and this definition is important for the exam, you can remember it in toto. A religion is a unified system of beliefs and practices related to sacred things, that is to say, things set apart and forbidden. Beliefs and practices which unite in one single moral community called a church, and those who adhere to them. A few things to notice. First, there is no mention of the supernatural. For supernatural to exist, there should be something as natural, that is, natural phenomena which can be explained by science. But this distraction is a very recent occurrence and therefore cannot be included in the definition for Durkheim. Secondly, he also doesn't include the notion of God in his definition. Durkheim took the example of Buddhism to explain that there are religions which do not require belief in God. The focus of Buddhism is the Four Noble Truths, and salvation occurs apart from any divine intervention. So, coming back to the definition, three things constitute religion in the most basic form: the presence of sacred things, beliefs and practices, and a moral community. The most important thing to notice is the centrality of the notion of the sacred. Everything revolves around it. The beliefs and practices are relative to the sacred. The moral community exists because of the beliefs and practices. So, at the heart of religion is the idea of the sacred. So, what does the sacred mean? Sacred objects are like idols of gods, or holy books, or temples. But we have also seen sacred rocks. The point is that humans can make almost anything sacred. The question then becomes, how do humans do it? How can the Indian flag and terrorist groups be sacred enough that people are willing to die for them? To understand this power of the sacred empirical terms, we have to begin with Durkheim's consideration of ancient totemic religions. In his study of Australian aborigines, Durkheim saw that ancient totemic religions had some interesting functions. Different clans composed of various hunting and gathering groups who lived most of their lives separately, neither related by blood or geography, but they came periodically together for celebration. What held them together was the name of the totem, the symbol for the clan. Members of the clan had the same totem, and they acted towards one another as if they were a family having obligation to each other to seek vengeance, endogamy, etc. The totem also acted as an emblem for the clan, both within and to differentiate from other clans. Thus, totem formed bonds and it represented the clan. In addition, totem was used during religious ceremonies. Things are classified as sacred and profane by reference to the totem. It is the very archetype of sacred things. Different items became sacred because of the presence of the totem, that is, the totemic symbol. The totem imparted to the object the quality of being sacred. Thus, the totem represents the clan. It creates bonds of kinship and it also represents and imparts the quality of being sacred. So let's take an example. If A equal to B, that is clan, which is society, equal to the totem, and B equal to C, that is totem equal to God, then is A equal to C? Is society equal to God? Are they the same? This is the question AD seeks to answer. By this, Durkheim begins to discover the reality behind the sacred and thus religion. One of the primary features of the sacred that it stands diametrically opposite the profane. Profane is everything that is not sacred. One cannot exist in the presence of the other. So, how did humans conceptualize these two distinct realms? The answer to this will help us realize the reality behind sacredness. Durkheim found that the aborigines of Australia had two cycles to their lives. One, in which they carried out their daily life in small groups, and the other, in which they gathered in large collectives. In small groups, they would take care of the daily needs through hunting and gathering. It was the place of home and hearth. Yet, each group saw itself as a part of a larger group, the clan. Periodically, the small groups would come together for large collective celebrations. During these celebrations, the clan members were caught up in collective effervescence or the high levels of emotional energy. Here, the behavior changed. They feel possessed by a strong moral force greater than the individual. It led to outlandish behavior, which in normal times would have been judged loathsome and harshly condemned. Thus, these clan members began to conceive two different worlds: the mundane world of their daily existence and the world of the clan, where they were controlled by an external force greater than themselves. The first is the profane world, and the second is the world of sacred things. It is in these effervescent social conditions, and indeed from the very effervescence, that religious idea seems to have born. Thus, Durkheim is arguing that human beings are able to create high levels of emotional energy whenever they gather together. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and something emerges that is felt outside the individual. The dynamic is what is in the back of mob behavior, as people get caught up in overwhelming emotion of the moment and do things that they normally would not do. Think of all the lynchings which are happening and all the innocent people they were murdered by the mob. There is no accountability and only anonymity in a mob. So Durkheim is answering Rousseau's question: how did the general will or the collective consciousness come into existence? For Durkheim, it is out of this emotional effervescence. Humans are linked emotionally, and once these emotions are established, they control human connections unconsciously. Rational behavior is not always possible under these emotions, even though we might come up with a reason to justify such actions. This emotional soup is from where human society is built. Initially, emotions run wild, and so does our behavior in primitive societies. But when interactions are repeated again and again, emotions become more focused on specific behavior, which is good for all, and thus morals emerge. So, in general, Durkheim argues that humans are able to create high levels of emotional energy whenever they gather together. Think of the energy you feel at sports matches when you support any team, when it is the thrill of victory or the agony of defeat. This is the emotional effervescence Durkheim is talking about. So, contemporary sociologist Randall Collins described Durkheim's theory in somewhat different terms. He gave three principal elements which are required for such interactions, which he termed as co-presence. That is the degree of physical closeness in space we are with other people. Second, the common emotional mood, the degree to which we share the same feeling about the event. And third, the common focus of attention, that is the degree to which the participants are attending to the same object, symbol, or idea at the same time. So, when humans gather together in intense interactions, with all three having high levels, we produce high levels of emotional energy. And people tend to symbolize this emotional energy by creating sacred symbols and by creating rituals. That is behavior which is again replicated to replicate our interaction with these elements. The symbols allow the people to focus their intention and remember the emotion, and also gives collective emotional stability. These rituals also became unique to those groups, and the symbols also become unique to those groups, thus creating a moral boundary, that is specific behavior, speech, patterns, styles of dress associated to that group, and thus issues of right and wrong emerge. It is important to remember when we are talking about morality in sociology, we are not talking about what is good or bad, right? Rather, we are talking about behaviors, beliefs, feelings, speech, styles, etc., which are strongly controlled by group norms and are viewed in terms of right and wrong for that group, not for us or for anyone else. With this, we come to another theoretical concept of Durkheim, which is religious rituals. In Durkheim's theory, rituals are patented sequence of behavior, that is, behavior which can be repeated to recreate high levels of co-presence, common emotional mood, and common focus of attention. For Durkheim, rituals function to create and invigorate a group's moral boundaries and identity. So keep in mind that this definition is only specific to Durkheim. Other thinkers might have talked about rituals differently, right? So this is very important because it gives us sociological and empirical explanation for religion and sacredness. Right? In modern society, there are many different religions and different gods and each with their own beliefs. So, how do people see such diverse things as real? So, Durkheim gives an answer to that puzzle, that the issue of reality, sacredness, or morality isn't based on ultimate truth for humans, right? But it is based on our experience of reality, of sacredness and morality. They are based on Durkheimian rituals and collective emotions. That is why it is possible for different people to believe in different things but still feel the same emotion. Because these kind of rituals create high levels of emotional energy that come to be invested in symbols, and these symbols are then seen as sacred regardless of the meaning or the value of truth of the beliefs or association or other associations with that symbol. Another important thing about Durkheim's theory is that it gives us a sociological explanation for the experience that people have of something outside of themselves and greater than themselves. So, this is the social fact which Durkheim was talking about of emotional effervescence and religious rituals. Everyone has this kind of an experience, like when you are marching in a parade and you are to obey what society says, right? Like uh, how it is seen that small communities tend to be more conservative, right? Or the feeling that you have when you are on the Republic Day parade. So these are some of the things which Durkheim's theory is very useful to answer. Okay guys, this is the end of the video. Please comment on how you liked the video and if you have any doubts. Also, please subscribe to us for future videos and join the Telegram group where we interact and discuss about topics and questions. Bye bye.